never forget through all the pain and the sweat that you're not done with me yet. I got to keep pressing, got to keep pressing on. You know I never forget that you're not done with me yet. And all the tears that I let, I got to keep pressing, got to keep pressing.
Now I done slipped and stumbled, flipped, failed, and fumbled in this walk with you, Lord. Sometimes.
Grace to you, family. I'd like to welcome everyone to Let's Grow Together. My name is Corey. I have my friends with me. Not my friends, but my brothers with me.
Brothers.
I got Patrick and I got Greg with me. We come today. Our goal is to encourage people, to build people up, and to restore hope and let people know that Jesus still lives. We ask that you share this video. We're going to be speaking on the topic of addiction. We're going to be speaking to those that are addictions of any kind. We believe that God can destroy them. We believe that he still has power and that he's still on the throne. So these guys are going to just share a little bit of their testimony. I'm going to share some of my testimony. And I just ask once again that you share. So we want to talk about the topic of addiction.
Okay.
Now, we understand that addiction is not just those that are on drugs, but those that are addicted to selling drugs. And so, Pat, I would like for you to give just to give a little bit of your testimony on that.
Well, Corey, first of all, thank you for this setting, but also to the audience, selling drugs for me was a real serious addiction. I mean, Corey, it took me away from the things that were important to me, my family, and I did not see it at the time. I mean, one simplistic scenario is where when you get caught up in selling drugs begin to master you.
Right.
I mean, your shipments coming in begin to master you. They take all your time. Nothing comes between that.
Right.
And for me, man, I was able to be involved in being addicted to selling drugs and the lifestyle that comes with it. And that separated me, from a lot of things that my family was doing. When I was addicted to selling drugs and got taken away, some of the things that befell me was, hey, man, my sisters was without their big brother presence. Their boyfriends would then, beat them up. Whereas when I was here, that would not happen.
Right.
One other thing that really stands out is very vividly, I remember my mother, man, had a birthday party.
Right.
Of course, I financed it, and we were ready and waiting. But during the course of time, by the time the birthday party came, I had got my shipment in.
Right.
I spent all my day working on what I needed to work on over there with that shipment versus being at my mother's birthday party.
Wow.
And it hurt her, but I couldn't see it. I was so entrenched in my addiction that I could not see, how I was hurting my family members.
Right. And that's kind of what we want to speak to is how addiction affects your loved ones and your family members. And like you were saying, sometimes when we're running the streets and we live in that life, we're moving so fast that it's not until we're incarcerated that we realize how much of life we really missed. Yeah. Birthday parties become real, meaningful to us. Holidays become more meaningful to us. But when you out there and you're addicted to that lifestyle. So do you feel that you were addicted to money or that you were addicted to the lifestyle? And I know money is a part of the lifestyle.
Yes, but early on, it's really about the money. But as you begin to progress, and the money becomes a norm, now other things begin to be added on and lock on to you. It becomes about the lifestyle. It becomes about the prestige. It just basically becomes about the process itself. I remember one time I had a place I was out of work and out of supply, and ultimately there was no need for me to have any. But I just could not stand the fact that I had no supply. When I had money, I had time, and it was around Christmas, and it was really time to be around family. But I didn't want that. I just felt this urge and this addiction to I just got to see my houses operating.
Wow.
I don't care if I don't make anything.
Wow.
Because it starts out about money, but ultimately once you're doing it for a while and money doesn't become the biggest factor, other things begin to latch on to you and they begin to direct you and dominate you and affect you in a way that you don't see at first. But now as I look back, I'm able to see that, man, I didn't even have to sell anything at this particular time. I could have took some months off, but I just could not stand the fact that I did not have anything going on, or no work supply going through this house or that place or that place. Yeah.
Wow. And when I was studying addiction, one thing that I learned is that addiction is transferable. Mm-hmm. You can move from, that addiction can move from one place to the next place. And I know you guys have been in the streets, as long as I've been in the streets, and we've lived a long time. We've been incarcerated. We know a lot of people, and often we see this within our community, to where someone was a drug dealer and made it to a certain height, and now the one that used to sell drugs becomes the one that ends up using the drugs. Greg, have you ever seen this? Is this something that you could speak on?
Well, yeah, I wanted to say something about, like, we talk about addiction, and addiction is something that we're addicted to that got to do with substance and things and activities.
Right.
And so, you start out and not knowing what you're really doing. I mean, first, the reason why I say that, substance, from back when I was growing up, crack cocaine came out in the 80s.
Right.
And people didn't know what it was.
Wow.
You know what I'm saying? And it went from New York all the way down to Texas, just like within a matter of months. And
Right.
all these people was addicted.
Right.
To, they didn't know it was a substance. They didn't know nothing about
So
it.
ignorance.
People knew about cocaine, but they didn't know nothing about
crack.
that. And they had done these processes, and they had did this. So that substance came through like a flood, and
Wow.
nobody was ready for that.
Wow.
And so a lot of us as young kids growing up was experiencing different things and doing different drugs. I was at that age where we was experimenting drugs. We was doing all kind of mushrooms and just stuff that we didn't know nothing about. And
Wow.
then this crack came in, and it just really just took over a whole generation, a couple of generations of people, and they just got started doing it, and it just became a trend, sort of like. And everybody started doing it. Everybody started selling it. They seen the money in it. They seen the how it did people, how it made people spend their money. So I came in at a time when we was experimenting with it.
Wow.
And so a lot of us got addicted
Wow.
really fast, really quick,
Not knowing.
not knowing what the
Naive.
substance was.
Right.
And a lot of us, one person would learn about it, and he would teach the other people about it. And then it just was a trend, and then everybody was just doing it.
Wow.
Everybody was doing it, got caught up in doing it. And then once we got caught up in doing it, that's when it became addiction.
Wow.
See what I'm saying?
It was
And
too late then. It had to.
but it was too late because we was practicing it. It was a trend. If you wasn't smoking it, you was selling it.
Right.
And then some people were smoking and selling it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So it was just at that time and era, that's what was going on, and that's what flooded the
Neighborhood.
society, and everybody got caught up in it. And the whole thing about it was, you really didn't know what you were getting caught up in.
Wow.
You really didn't know the power of addiction.
That's right, the
back
strength
then.
of it.
Yeah,
Right.
we didn't know that it was gonna carry on for decades later.
Wow.
And people were still gonna be, and people that I did drugs with back then are still on drugs today.
Wow.
30 years later,
Wow.
35 years later. So you didn't know what was going on, but like you said, some guys back then that didn't use drugs, that sold the drug, 20, 30 years later, now,
They're using the drugs.
so they using the drug, but it was a substance that we really didn't know nothing about.
Wow.
And over time we learned about it, but like you said, it was too late.
Wow.
And people never got past the addiction part of it.
Wow.
Like some people just never came out of it. Some people we know still using the same drug.
Wow.
Like it was yesterday. Like it was.
Wow.
They just started yesterday,
Yeah.
but they 50 years old now.
Wow.
See what I'm saying?
It
So-
probably started when they were teenagers.
That's what I'm telling you. Because we started 17, 18.
Wow.
So
that's
if they
young.
started back then 17, 18, and they still use it just shows you how strong the addiction
Addiction
part
is. Wow.
of being addicted to anything, that we just using a substance.
Yeah.
Right.
But if just being addicted to anything, that's how powerful it could be. If really, if you ain't got Jesus in your life, because
To break.
the way I got out of it was I had been just in it so deep and had just brought me to the lowest I could get.
Right.
And I went to jail one day, and I was just tired of going to jail. After about my 15th time going to jail, just everything had to do with crack.
Right.
And I was about maybe 20 years old.
Wow.
I was young. So about 20 years old, and went to jail one day after about, like I said, 12, 15 times. I was tired. I was embarrassing my parents, embarrassing my family. My mother is going, berserk behind it because she couldn't believe that it was me. That this drug did this to me.
Wow. Destroying you.
Yeah,
Wow.
and she didn't understand the drug. She wasn't from that life.
Right.
So she didn't really know what was going on. So anyways, it took for me to go to jail and get on my knees one day in jail in the middle of the night and just cry out to God and ask him just, hey, this ain't me.
Wow.
I believe in you.
Right.
I know that, I was taught in this way to
Wow.
whenever I come to a point, my mom always taught me, whenever you get to your low, you go to God.
Right.
So I went to God, and I guess I stepped out of there a couple months later, and by the grace of God, I never used drugs again. But
Right.
I'm thinking about addiction, and then I'm thinking about all the people that didn't make it out.
Wow.
That don't know God.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And then I'm sitting here today in my right frame of mind, because a lot of people made it out, but they didn't make it out in their
With their
right frame of mind.
mind. With their mind.
See what I'm saying? So I'm grateful for that, but just to be here, letting people know and realizing that addiction is a really powerful thing. But
Wow.
if you don't have Christ, if you don't have that, people think they can do stuff on their own.
True.
That's I think that's one of the biggest deceptive things that
Right.
is the willpower people have. I don't think
Yeah.
that really.
It's deceiving. It makes you think that I got control of this.
But when it happens again and again and again,
Wow.
you don't understand why. But that's because it's not you. It's not me that's not making that choice every day.
That's right. It's the addiction.
God. It's
Yeah.
just God's help. Me crying out to Him, saying, "Look, I need your help. I need your power. I need your strength. I can't do it on my own.
Right. Right.
My own keeps me failing. My own keeps me going back. My own keeps me."
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So
Right.
without God, that's my biggest thing with people is, man, you ain't gonna get rid of hardly any addiction without God.
That's true. That's true. And that's powerful. And when we say God, we're not just saying it because, just cliche-ish, but we know it's power.
That's
You
it's
know,
power in the name.
That's right. There's power in the name. And that's what we come to bring to you guys today. Not religion, but the true and living God. It takes power to destroy power. And He has supreme power. And so, sometimes what happens is that we talk about crack. And so a lot of individuals, not a lot, but sometimes an individual feel, oh, I'll never do that. I'll never do that. But just like Greg said, sometimes you can get into something ignorantly. And I can remember I had gotten to the place where I had been in the game for a long time, and my thing was gang banging, selling drugs, sipping codeine and things of that nature. So I can remember that I told myself, I'm never gonna take pills. I'm never gonna do. I had rules, and I said, I'll never do this. I'll never do that. And so after a while, when they introduced X pills, when they finally hit our community, they've always been around. But I'm talking about hit the east side of Austin, hit our community,
Yeah.
where I was from. And so, I was real leery. I would sell them every now and then until one day, a situation just arose and everybody was having a good time and they started popping them, and I said, you know what? I was dealing with stress and didn't know how to handle life, and didn't know Christ, and I took a pill. And after that, I took a pill. Then the next time we had to get together, I took another pill, and until one day when I was on Givens Park, it almost took my life.
A substance that you don't know nothing about.
A substance I knew nothing about, but I just watched the fun that I thought everybody was having
Right.
when they were on it, because it's a designer drug, so you use it when you party. But I said that to say to those out there that's hustling now and feel like, I got my addiction under control. I just smoke a little wet. I smoke a little K2, a little dip, or I smoke a little gangster, which was really popular back in our days, and I got it under control. But what happens is, in the beginning, you may have the addiction, but eventually the addiction is going to have you. So you'll start out smoking it, and then it will begin to smoke you. And so what'll happen, and I've seen it happen so many times, is that you begin to lose your cool.
Yeah.
You begin to lose your cool, and I tell people all the time, well, what does it mean to lose your cool? You begin to do things that you always said you would never do.
That's right.
I never steal from my mother. I would never take this drug. I would, no. I gotta be dressed all the time. It becomes a point in time you start losing your cool, and you begin to do things that you thought you would never do. That's a good sign. See, once you compromise once with that addiction, it got you.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And so you're no longer smoking it, but it's smoking you.
That's right.
So Pat, with your addiction of drug selling, you were penalized. You went to prison. Can you speak about the term they gave you?
Whew. After 10 years of selling drugs, Corey, and becoming really addicted to the lifestyle and
Right.
and everything that I grew up knowing, hey, you work for a living, you earn a degree, and those things begin
That's
to
how
go
you were
by.
raised?
Yeah, that's how I was raised. But those things begin to fall by the wayside after a decade of selling drugs and being addicted to this particular lifestyle and thinking that,
What lured you in?
well, what lured me in was, I come from a impoverished area where,
Right.
most of the times, or some of the times, our lights were off.
Right.
So the guys on the TV wasn't my role models.
Right.
It was the guys on the street corners that was my
Right.
role models,
Right.
and that lured me in. The shield and the protective voice of my mother kept me from, don't you do that, don't you be like these guys on the street corner, don't you be like that. That held me at bay for a minute.
Right.
Until I became a young teenager, and then I just got tired of the lights always off. I got tired of my mother telling me how great God is when I'm like, well, how come my lights are off?
Wow.
Things like that. So that type of stuff lured me in. Once it lured me in, I began to, and I've worked my whole life, but once my income in that lifestyle began to trump my job, I had to, I made a conscious decision to eliminate my job and work full-fledged and concentrate on this other stuff.
Right. Right.
So that's how I got lured in by the street corner activities, and then the impoverished state that I was in emotionally,
Right.
where we have no food. Someone's always bringing us food. Lights are always cut off, and
Wow.
and it just kind of drove
It's
me.
tough. It's tough to handle, as a young man, and then, you want to be a man, you want to provide for your family.
Yeah.
And, selling drugs is easy in our community.
Yeah.
Because, while you're playing basketball, you got people hitting legs. While you're playing football, you see so much. I mean, we can literally go outside of our door and probably walk 2 blocks down with no money in our pocket and come back home with $2,000 in our pocket.
Yeah.
And so I definitely understand the lure, and that's just kind of for people that are not from our community. But I understand this about addiction. Addiction doesn't care what neighborhood you're from. It doesn't care anything about your age, and it doesn't care anything about the color of your skin. Nope. The Bible talks about the prodigal son, and it says that when he was in the hog pen, and, the slop even began to look good to him. And then the Bible says that he came to himself at his lowest point.
Right.
Can you kind of speak about your lowest point, that point to where you got to to a place to where you say, hey man, I got to do something different. This ain't it. This ain't me.
Well, let me share this with you. I mean, I know everyone's experience is a little different.
Right.
But for me, I was a guy that ultimately for a decade, I mean, a lot of guys sell drugs for 6 months, a year, whatever the case may be. But for me, it was a decade.
Wow.
And I went to prison in between it, but it still was a decade.
How many times you go to prison?
Twice.
Okay.
Yeah, once in the state, and then I got out, and once in the feds.
Okay. How long did you have with the state? How long was your sentence?
It was 15 years, but it was 3 15-year sentences ran concurrent, which means it's just one
Put 'em
15-year
together.
sentence.
Right.
Yes. And I think I did about 3 years.
Okay.
And came on and got right back into my addiction.
Wow. So you didn't even think, did you even think about getting a job and, going straight or that addiction of hustling was so in you that when you got out, you was just like, this is the only life I know or the only life I want?
Well, what happens is addiction can deceive you. I went to prison and I had a good run of years. Then I went to prison. Well, while in prison, I decided that this addiction to this lifestyle really deceived me into believing that, well, if I just study illegal search and seizure procedures,
Right.
if I learn a little bit about what they do, I can better capitalize my business
Wow.
over here. So when I got out, I hit the ground running with that deceptive motive. Went out and got right back into drug selling, and ultimately, sold drugs for many years again, and then went to federal prison. But Corey, federal prison gave me a life sentence, and even
For
with
selling drugs?
For selling drugs.
No violent
No
crime.
violent crime, no murder,
Wow.
no nothing. Just it's the laws at that time in 1994 were really, really different than what they are. Crack ratio sentences versus powder sentences were different then than compared to now. However, they gave me a life sentence in federal prison, and in the feds there is no parole. So life means you're here till you die.
Wow.
And they told me, in fact, on my judgment and commitment paper, it says where it has your release date, it had deceased. And they told me, when you die and we bury you, we're gonna handcuff you.
Wow.
But ultimately, I think the first 2 years, Corey, when you go into prison and you are on a high level, you're paying attorneys, you're doing this, you're doing that. You go in, you just keep being the guy you are. You just rolling. And I remember I had a life sentence and I was doing push-ups and wanting to keep a six-pack and all the worldly stuff that
Right.
you normally do. But ultimately, one day, Corey, things began to dawn on me slowly, and it was no light at the end of the tunnel. It was no big flash. It was just I began to question some stuff. Man, I gotten away from what my mother taught me.
Wow, that's good.
How she gave me 3 principles as a man. While yet a woman, she raised me and taught me how to be a man.
Right.
And she taught me that you serve God, you work for a living, and you treat people how you want to be treated. I had gotten away from all of those things.
Wow.
So it began to dawn on me slowly about the 3rd year that I said, man, I want to get back to the principles that my mother taught me, because those things, are things
Foundation.
that they are, and
core.
a core, a great foundation. And I just decided that how will I go about that? And then
Wow.
I made a decision. I mean, I'm in USP Leavenworth at this point with a life sentence,
Right.
and I just made up my mind that forget about such and such toll on me. I told on myself with my lifestyle.
Wow.
I didn't
Took
want
responsibility
I took
for it.
responsibility. I didn't want to yoke with he set me. No, I told on myself with my lifestyle, and all this happened like in my 3rd year there. And I said, man, I wanna serve God. Then I went through this struggle of, well, who is God? I mean,
Yeah.
the Christians say this, the Muslims say that, this group says that. I need to learn, so I spent a lot of time there. But that 3rd year is where I began to take flight in my mentality and my emotions about, man, I've got to change. I keep going to jail. Let me share this with you, Corey. When you go to jail and you have the addiction of using or the addiction of selling, the they have limitations on what you can purchase. And everyone has a spending limit of
Right.
$165.
Okay.
So I don't care if you a kingpin or
You
you're
can't go
indigent.
over- you can't go
you
over
can't buy but
$160.
$160 worth of cookies.
Right.
You know, so the thing is, man, this addiction really dominated my life, and it took some very precious moments out of my life. And just let me share with you, man, I went to prison. My daughters were 2 years old. When I came home, my daughters were 18 years old.
Wow.
When I went to prison, my mother was 72 years old. 3 months before I came home, 16 years, 8 months, my mother passed away.
Wow.
So for me, some of the drawback of addiction to what I was addicted to is that I felt as if I've let my children down during the most precious, impressionable years of their life.
Wow.
2 years up. And the most fragile years of my mother's life, this addiction dominated me to where I couldn't see. I just kept saying, well, I can do 5 years.
Right.
But my mother can't.
Wow.
My children can't.
Wow.
And so those are some of the disadvantages and that this addiction has done to my life.
Wow, and you know, that's very powerful. And you know, I just want to take time out and you know thank those mothers and those grandmothers, those fathers, those people that have ministered to us and to others throughout you know our lives and shared the good news of Christ. I want you to know that your labor of love has not been in vain.
Right.
But sometimes we have to hit our bottom.
Right.
And when we hit that bottom, guess what? We have nothing but that in which you have imparted into us. Those things that you have shared to us. Like he said, when he hit rock bottom, the only thing he had was those 3 principles that his mother had put on the inside of him about Christ. The Bible says, train a child up in the way he should go, and when he's older, he won't depart. Now, that journey may get shaky at times, but I truly believe by the Spirit of God that child or that man will come back to the place and the principles of what it is that we have imparted on the inside of them. And when I can remember, I was incarcerated for attempted murder. I'll never forget it. And so I had got off the phone with my mother, and it dawned on me. You know, a light popped on. I said, everything this woman has been telling me is true. What she was saying about the friends, where I was going to end up, just everything she had told, the light popped on.
Right.
And so everything she told me about Christ, it was true. And I just want you to know, keep sowing that seed, keep speaking about Christ, testifying about Christ, because people are listening. Sometimes the volume of sin and the lifestyle that we are living, sometimes it deafens us to the voice of God, or it distracts us from that has been imparted on the inside of us. But God has a way of putting you in the belly of the whale. And when you're in the belly of the whale, the only thing you have is what people have imparted into your life, what your mother, your grandmother, your father, whoever has imparted to your life. Then you begin to use those tools. You begin to use those tools. You begin to call on that name that they taught you. And you don't know, I was there. Is he real? Is he not real? I don't understand some of these stories in the Bible. It seems like he's a mean God to me. I went through all of those emotions, but that was the beginning of my journey.
That's right.
And if it wasn't for those times, if it wasn't for the bottom, I wouldn't be here now. Right. And Greg, you were talking about something earlier that, blew my mind. Every now and then I used to watch the movie Snowflake and Snowfall. I believe that's what it is. And it was hard for me to really stomach that movie because the 16, 17-year-olds, they were so naive to what it is that they were trying. See, we know now in 2021, hey, you don't want to smoke that.
Right.
Hey, that's not a casual drug. No. That's stronghold there. It'll take the hand of God to take that off of you.
Right.
But you actually had the opportunity to witness it hit our community. Right. I mean, what was it like when it first hit? Because I can remember in the 90s, when I was in high school and a guy came. I had never seen crack before, but I knew about it. And when I got to high school, I was introduced to it. Packs and things of that nature. But you got to see it when it was first introduced to our community.
Right.
Did you see the community at a height and then just begin to fall? Did you begin to see 17-year-olds around you all of a sudden just, I mean, what was it like?
Back in those days, back in the 70s, you still had a lot of, it was a lot of politics going on. We was in still race wars. I mean, it was black community,
Racism.
whites, and you know what I'm saying? So it was
Right.
a lot of stuff going on that distracted. Our community was just like just a regular, not in middle class, it was a low class community.
Still
You know what I'm
poverty.
saying?
Right.
It was just a normal low class community.
Right.
But when crack hit the scene,
Okay.
when crack hit the scene, crack did something to the community to devour it. It was just
Wow.
it was
Like a monster.
Because at first you didn't know really what you was getting into.
My God.
And
my
then
God.
3, 4, 5 years later, people still on drugs. But now they used to wear good tennis shoes. Now they're wearing sandals or they're wearing socks, walking around here with
Or
stems
barefoot.
in their mouth and living out of bathrooms, sleeping in cars. Or same people that used to
Right.
have a job,
Right.
used to work for the city.
Right.
Now they sleeping in their car.
Wow.
Smoking pipes with lights coming on in their car in the middle of the night because they smoking crack and got all kind of, now they got sores on their body, ain't been home in 3 days, and ain't changed clothes in 4, 5 days. It just changed the community.
Did a light come on to where you say, wow?
Well,
Look
that's
at
what I'm
what this
telling
stuff-
you. That's what I'm telling you. After I got to a point, after 3 or 4 years of doing this,
Right.
I started to see that this stuff is destroying people's life.
Wow.
Even moms were leaving their house with kids, now they living on the streets, prostituting themselves. And
Wow.
these are women who had regular jobs,
Wow.
taking care of their kids every day.
Gave it up.
Next thing you know, 2 years later, they over here with Tom, Dick, and Harry, and just everybody's just,
Yeah.
it's crazy. Pipes sitting on not going home for days. You know what I'm saying? Sitting on just wherever they could go, remote areas. We already know the Rio Lotto, Thurman Heights, all them places was a part of these people doing drugs.
Wow.
It just flooded the city, and then like I said, it was a substance that nobody knew about.
Right.
And after years and years, and then, now 10 or 15 years then went by, and people started to see people not coming back.
Wow.
People not coming back. They
Wow.
still out here on this stuff.
Wow.
10 years later, now they got that little girl that was 5 years old is 15 years old
Wow.
without her mom.
Wow.
Her mom left when she was 5
Wow.
on drugs. Now the girl 15 years old,
Wow.
and her mom is still on drugs
Wow.
10 years later.
Wow.
So this drug was it came, as a surprise, but it destroyed. Within 10 years, it took out a whole generation.
And I think, and one thing that I see in the black community, not everywhere, but sometimes it's a practice. We don't really have a lot of sympathy for those that are addicted to drugs. If you're addicted to marijuana, that's cool. You're addicted to syrup, that's cool. But there's certain drugs that we shun on in the black community. You're on crack or something like that. We feel like these individuals sometimes are less than. Truth be told, we feel like we treat them like they're less than. I was watching a video the other day and a guy was saying, well, we don't care about nobody that's addicted to crack. And we make names about them. But when you get to understand, if you really know the true origins of how it got into our
That's
community,
right. That's right.
and that people naively were taking these drugs and they were just like, just like anybody else, didn't know
right.
what was going on.
right.
If you weren't ignorant, of the beginning of the crack era, you would see how naive they were and how it just came in. It just came in and just took our community over.
And it's still taking our community
And it's
over.
still taking our community over.
30, 40, 50 years later.
We still suffering from the effects.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
You
that
know-
shows you how powerful the addiction is.
Right. And we talk about gentrification, but ain't nothing hit the black community harder than crack.
No.
But you look at it now, we're battling with crack, We battling with codeine. We battling with K2. We battling with Fry. And, you know, and what I'm seeing is some of these things other than crack that our young people are using as recreational drugs, you know,
Right.
social drugs. They're almost having the same effects that crack would have on an individual.
That's right.
You know, these guys getting on that K2.
And it's going faster. It's to me,
Go ahead.
I think, excuse me.
No, you got it.
To me, what I've seen with this new drug is it takes the brain faster.
Wow.
It takes you know, crack takes some years of constantly doing it
Wow.
before they just start doing. But this new drug they got
It's taking
now,
it fast.
now these kids are they get undressed on the side of the highway.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That's you know, that's you got to think about that. A drug will make you get out your clothes on the side of a highway.
That's true. It's sad, and you know it's very deceptive because, like I say, the enemy has made it look cool. You know, something we do when we hanging out and we listen to music, not knowing that that devil has a stronghold on you, and his desire is to kill, steal, and destroy. But we come to tell you that Christ came that you may have life and that you may have it more abundantly. So
that's right.
before we get up out of here, is there anything that you guys want to share with your testimony? Anything that you guys want to share with those that may be addicted, or anything that God has placed on your heart?
Corey, I would like to share some to the audience, but again, we go through this cycle, and that entire 10 years, you know, we can cover up what we're doing, at least mentally in our minds, saying, well, it ain't so bad. You know, I got this under control. Yeah, I know I missed my daughter's graduation or this, but that's okay. I'll buy something for a birthday. When you're entrenched in this drug dealing, this dope selling, and you become addicted to this lifestyle, you can easily begin to believe that, well, I got it under control.
Right.
And then I just want to share that with the audience, that to those drug dealers that think that they got everything under control, they are more abrasive than they think they are to the
Wow.
to their family members. They're more negative to their family members because you hold this yourself on this pedestal and everyone else is beneath you, and that's what this addiction brings to you. And I just want to say to those people that think that, well, I got it under control, I can quit when I want. Well, the best thing you can do is recognize that you don't have it under control.
That's right.
And you are abrasive to everybody. And the best thing you can do is recognize that I have got to stop this. This is not what I've been taught. And you can take the opportunity to say, you know what, let me just stop at all costs, because I am harming people far more than I'm helping.
Wow.
And you, even though you may have the mentality that I'm in control, I'm treating everybody nice, I bought everybody this and that, you're still far too abrasive, and you're not a very good person. You mistreat everybody, but you do have an opportunity to overcome it right now.
But I don't think we see it, Pat. You know, now when I look at Austin and what it has gone through with the gentrification and how, you know, they've closed down a lot of spots we used to hang at, I look back at myself and, you know, and I'm only speaking for myself, but I kind of feel like I somewhat share the responsibility of what has happened to our community,
Right.
because of the contribution that I made.
Yeah.
You know,
Took
through
part.
selling drugs,
Right.
through gang banging, through times when we would try to organize, do things for the community. You know, I was in darkness. I was young. I was ignorant. You know, I understand all of those things, so I don't walk around with a guilt and condemnation. But I do understand that I contributed to the downfall or the tearing down of my community, you know, and I want to apologize to my community for it, and I've repented to God, but I understand my part. And you know, when you're selling drugs to a person, you're not thinking that that's somebody's mother,
Right.
that's somebody's father, that's somebody's son, that's somebody's brother. But we have to stop inflicting our own wounds in our communities. We have to stop hurting ourselves. I know everybody won't ride with this, but it's the truth anyhow.
Yeah.
We have to sometimes look at ourselves. Now, we understand that we're not bringing the drugs in. We understand that it's part of a bigger plan. We understand. We get all of that. But I'm taking responsibility for the role that I played in my ignorance.
Right.
Was there ever a time to where when you got out, you thought about, all the, the drugs that you pushed in the community, and what it, not saying that it was your fault, because I mean, we are, wow, where we come from, 4 out of 5 young people probably drug dealers. But did it ever hit you like, man, I may have contributed to these individuals' lives being like that? Did that conviction ever come on you? Did the thoughts like that ever cross your mind?
Absolutely. I think for years and years and years, I had made up my mind that I want to go apologize to certain people that I had done wrong because of just the way that I treated them and the abrasive attitude that I had towards them. I wanted them to know, hey, it was never you. It was always me.
Right.
And I apologize to you, and I'm sorry for the way that I acted.
Wow.
And then of course the communities. There's people that you see that we saw back in that day that were on drugs. Now you see them today, and you can't help, at least for me, feel some guilt about my contribution to them.
True.
Because on a high level,
True.
I was selling drugs for over a decade.
Right.
True.
So I impacted a lot of lives with negativity.
True.
And of course, I've repented of my behavior and try to make amends, through teaching and education. In this form today.
True.
So certain things like this, along with the apologies to many people that I've done wrong, even my family members, just saying, I'm sorry that I was not there.
Wow.
I messed up.
Wow.
I went against what my mother taught me, and it cost me dearly. I can't ever get that back, but I want you to know that from today on,
I'm a different person.
it's different.
And when I was going through my process and God was convicting me of my lifestyle, I thought back on all the young people that I recruited, and I taught how to be a gangbanger, how to rob people, how to do drive-by, how to sell drugs, and not only taught them the actions, but I also taught them the mentality.
Right.
And some of those young men lost their lives. Some of them young men holding on to the principles that I taught are in prison for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And so, like I said, I don't walk around with guilt and condemnation because I know I was ignorant.
Yeah.
I know that I was living in darkness, but God convicted me of it. He softened my heart by showing me my contribution, but then also at the same time showing me his love and his forgiveness and helping me to understand that I did it out of ignorance.
Right. That's
right.
So, I thank God for being God. Is there anything you want to share, Greg, before we go?
Well, I'd like to piggyback off of what Pat was saying. To you young guys out there and young women, listen to your parents.
Right.
Because
they love you.
Your parents, they've lived longer than you, and they've been through more than you've been through. And they most of the time they're telling you the right things to do. Right. So don't frown up at your parents or blow them off on things they tell you, because these same tools you're gonna use, you're gonna need one day.
That's right.
Listen to your parents.
That's right. You're going to need them, especially if you ever have to see the low place. We ask that you never make it to that place. But if you get to the low place, the only thing you'll have is that which Christ has imparted on the inside of you, no matter which vessel he used to do it. So I'd like to thank you guys for coming out, sharing with Let's Grow Together community. We ask that you share this video, and that if it's been a blessing to you, I ask that you pray for all of us that are up here, and we want you guys to know that we're praying with you and we're praying for you. Until the next time, we want you to know that we love you guys, and this has been Let's Grow Together.
Through all the pain and the sweat that you're not done with me yet. I got to keep pressing on. I never forget.